You let me know when you're ready.
All right, you're good.
Okay, we can go?
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. Hope you had a good night. Everybody got the correction for the homework assignment? Good. Sorry about that error. But hey, we'll keep it moving. They have asked me to kind of give a brief recap because yesterday's session that everyone seemed to enjoy, a couple of folks want to be able to record that. So I'm going to end up having to do that again, probably Monday after the social. So some of you that either want to hear it again or you had people that missed it and they want to participate, it'll be Monday night. I don't know exactly what time, but we'll get that to you. But with that said, I had this as a two-part seminar. What I didn't know is where part one was going to end and part two was going to begin because I didn't know how much we got covered. But we covered quite a bit yesterday. And today the focus is going to be kind of a recap. And then I want to make sure I allow enough time to talk about the two proofs of the Bible, okay, that we promised in the description of the seminar. So yesterday we talked about, defending the faith. We talked about why it was important, right? Making sure that people's faith wasn't impacted. We covered a couple of common questions. There were a number of questions. And I think I mentioned the good news is that we will cover a couple of them. The bad news is that a lot of them wouldn't be answered. But we want to empower you to be able to research the Bible and develop appropriate responses to some of these questions based on biblical principles. Yesterday, we also talked about the analogy of the crime scene. Everybody remember the analogy of the crime scene? Okay. There's evidence, and then there's people that don't want to see the evidence. And I hope everybody would put their mind around. That's really what happened, right? So people that don't want to see evidence, we don't have to spend time with them. We know they're seriously not serious about the Bible, and we leave them be, right, young people? We don't worry about it. Okay, then we talked about you see what you believe. If you don't believe there's evidence, and if you don't believe a crime happened, you're not going to research it. So people that don't want to believe it, they really don't want to know, and we leave them where they are. Correct? Correct. Then we talked about the satanic attack on the Word of God. You remember what that number one attack was? There are no autographs, right? We don't have the original letter that Paul wrote. We don't have the original documents that Moses wrote. But they don't either. There's no original Socrates. Actually, Socrates didn't write anything down. Okay? There's no original Aristotle. There's no original Plato. So none of us have originals. We all start the same. But we talked about we've got more evidence because we've got copies. We talked about how we want to think about it, right? Horizontal thinking versus vertical. And horizontal thinking, we talked about that being GPS. Remember when I threw the puzzle on the table, kids, and figure it out? And somebody said, well, I want to figure it out. I need to see the picture. Right. There are a lot of people that are trying to take individual puzzle pieces. They don't understand the overview, but they're creating their own picture, and they're giving that to you as truth. See, God has already painted the picture, so we really have the right map. We just got to learn how to use it and put it together, right? That's why the Bible says, if you notice, you have to work out your own salvation. Did you notice that? God doesn't just put it on autopilot and give us turn-by-turn instructions for each of our lives. He gives us principles, information, and then you got to be responsible for putting together the map of your life so that we all get to the kingdom. Okay? We talked about the rules of Bible study. Got to follow rules. You just can't freestyle this. There's 14 of them. We covered about 4 of them. And my favorite one is begin with the scriptures that are easiest to understand. You start right there. wherever you are. So whether you're 11 or 90, you start what you understand and you build from there. And you don't let anybody distract you or make you feel bad that you don't know as much as they think you need to know. Okay? We covered hermeneutics and apologetics, technical terms. Remember, hermeneutics was the science and art of biblical interpretation. Big word, but really it's just the way we go about understanding God's word. And then we covered how we have more manuscript proofs, right? We got thousands of manuscripts. They got a few hundred at best. So the evidence is on our side. So that's what we covered yesterday. Everybody remember that? Refresher? Okay, great. Today we're going to cover that. And it's ambitious, but you guys were great yesterday. So we're going to move through this as quickly as we can, but we don't want to do it too fast. I don't want to rush, I just want to move. You know the difference, right? Okay. And I apologize, my little clicker, I forgot to turn it off yesterday, so I'm suffering. Oh, let me see, I hope I got my pointer. Hopefully, do I have that? If not, I'll have to point at the screen and be unprofessional about it. How's that? Okay, got it. Okay, this is what we're going to cover today. And I'm going to try to get out of the way so people can see the screen, but the Western philosophers, I just want you to know who they are and where they fit and when they lived. So you can just have a framework on how you can put this together. Then we're going to talk about our biblical ancestors. Okay? Very interesting. This one I definitely want to talk about, organization of the Bible and the impact of Jerome. All right? Jerome was a scholar. He was commissioned by the Catholic Church. And what Jerome did to the organization of the books in the Bible is criminal. Criminal. And we want to talk about that. Extra biblical books, a lot of young people are looking at Jasher and Jubilees and all of that. Where's all that fit? Some of those books are good to read. But when you take those books and you try to create doctrine, that's where the problem is. But it's some very good history in some of these extra biblical books. So it's not something you need to run away from. You just need to know where to place it in your understanding. Two major proofs of the Bible. We're going to talk about an acronym called Unity. And I hope we have some time for question and answer. This is going to run a little bit over, just to let you guys know. Probably 10 or 15 minutes, plenty of time to get to services, but it's really important that we have an opportunity to talk about some of the basic questions you guys have, okay? All right, let's briefly get into Western philosophers. All right, there's a bunch of them. Thales is probably the first one. And by the way, young people, you guys are good on YouTube, right? If you take any of these guys' names and do and search on YouTube, there's some pretty good presenters that talk briefly about each of these philosophers, what they were all about, right? How they contributed to Western philosophy. And I think because of this presentation, you'll know exactly where these guys fit. But Thales is the first one. That's 600 BC. So I think the important part of this chart is this. The world's philosophy and educational systems, the earliest they can go back is 600 BC. That's 600 years before Christ. Keep that in mind for the next slide, okay? So we start with him. They cannot find any of his original writings. We don't even know what he wrote. Other people are telling us what he wrote. Big difference, all right? Pythagoras, he's an important figure. Pythagoras is considered the father of mathematics. And he talked a lot about how numbers, mathematics, reflects the vibration of the universe. Very interesting concept. Pythagoras made a major contribution to music. I don't know how to read music, but some of you in the room that know music, you know the notes in music tie into vibrations on instruments. So he was the first one that really kind of discovered that and talked about it. So he's the father of mathematics. But you can see these guys predated Socrates. So all of these guys are considered pre-Socratic philosophers. Socrates is probably considered the one that is the father or the one that Western philosophy originated with. Socrates never created anything written down. Everything about Socrates is conjecture. These guys will tell you what Socrates said, but we don't know whether that's exactly what Socrates said or not. Thank you. Very interesting. And so a gentleman mentioned to me yesterday at the picnic, he said, Ben, did you mention to everybody that Socrates never wrote anything down? I said, you're right, he never did. He said, you know what? Neither did Jesus Christ. Right? So here we are. We've got the father of philosophy. He didn't write anything down. Okay? And the originator of Christianity, Jesus Christ, didn't write anything down either, did he? Right? So nobody wrote anything down. Yet, we believe Socrates more than we believe Jesus Christ. Go figure. How does that work? Okay? See how crazy life is? So we don't have to shy away from this discussion. Plato and Aristotle, we're all familiar with those guys. But the point is, they go back 600 BC. I guess if I turn it on, it'll work. We hope it'll work. Okay, something's going on. All right, now let's go to the next one. Okay, I apologize for this slide. I don't know how you can see it in the back, but there's a chart. Yeah, get it going for me. There's a chart on the wall, and there's also a chart on that table there, but I tried to put it in one slide so I can show you a couple of things. First, this is Adam, Seth. I missed a few generations just so I can fit it on the slide, but it goes from Adam to Levi. All right? Now, Adam, Seth, Enos, and Methuselah. So through 7 generations, they all knew Adam. So their lives were intersected. Everybody follow that? So Adam certainly knew his son, and he knew some of his grandchildren. They lived at some point at the same time. Now, if you're a parent, any grandparents in the room? What do grandparents do with their children? They tell stories about, right? And then what do grandparents do with their grandchildren? You tell the story of the family, right? Johnny, Uncle Joe did this. So why do we think it's any different in the Bible? You don't think they talked about? You don't think Methuselah knew what happened in the garden? Come on now, right? They talked, just like we talk. Adam died about 220 years before Noah. So Adam really never lived long enough to see Noah. Okay? But Methuselah knew Adam. So right? So Noah is important because Noah is the link pre-flood and post-flood. So the idea that information was not transferred, come on now, this is crazy. They were talking to each other. Now, Shem, I made a note, something else, I gotta grab my note because I was looking at this morning. Please, let me grab my note because it was something else I wanted to mention. Yes. Now, Seth, he died 14 years before Noah. So Noah just missed Seth, but he knew Enos. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Now, so Noah knew what happened in the garden because it got passed down. Shem, who was 10th generation from Adam, he got information from Noah. Now we got the flood. Now this is where it gets interesting. We all know Abraham is considered the father of the what? Faithful. Abraham lived 175 years. Of the 175 years Adam lived, Shem was alive 150 of those years. Do I need to say that again? Abraham lived 175 years, and all except 25 years of Abraham's life, Shem was alive. So Shem understood what happened, because he got the information all the way down, and Abraham understood mathematics, he understood astronomy, and if you read in Josephus, Abraham actually went to Egypt. The Egyptians got a lot of their information from Abraham.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
Okay, now, this little chart takes us back to 4000 BC. So biblical history, our knowledge goes back 4,000 years. Western information, how far back they go? 600, right? 600 BC. I wasn't able to find anybody earlier than this guy here, Thales. Everybody with me? We have deep knowledge on the biblical Christian side. They don't have a whole lot, but it looks like it. Why? Because society supports their narrative, not ours. We all good? Good. Let's move on. Okay, let's talk about Jerome. Most of you, I would probably say everybody in the room, does not have a Bible organized like this. Your Bible looks more like that, right? From Genesis, and the last book is Malachi as it pertains to the Old Testament. Anybody got a Bible that looks different, different than this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody else got a Bible in the Old Testament organized like this. Why is that, important? Okay. If you have a Bible, I want you to turn to Luke 24, verse 44. Now I'm going to get there too. Now, and this is a quote from Jesus Christ, Luke 24. Come on, Van, got to get there. Okay. Now, in Luke 24, 40, and I'm breaking into a thought. Christ is talking to his disciples, and he said to them, "These are the words that I spoke to you when I was yet with you, and all the things which were written concerning me in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms," or some Bibles may say in the writings. So, did you notice what Jesus Christ said? The law, it was written by him in the law, it was written by him in the prophets, and it was written by him either in the Psalms or in the writings. Now, the Bible I have, in its original order, put out by Fred Culver and the Christian Biblical Church of God. This was the first Bible that I was aware of that was organized differently than what Jerome did back in AD 400. Notice, Christ said the law, right? We all know these are the law books, correct? Most Bibles are organized, the first 5 books, that's the order it's in. Prophets, this is where it gets interesting. We'll see what Jerome did. You've got the former prophets. Some of these books are considered one book. From a Hebrew perspective, there were 22 books, not 39. Was Old Testament is what, 39, right? 39. When you look at the scrolls, and we talked about the scrolls, they were written on the scrolls, there were 22 of them in the temple. Okay? So from a Hebrew perspective, there were 22 books. The number 22 refers to light. Interesting, right? 22, light. See, the Bible is very congruent, consistent. But when you mess up the order, it impacts the understanding of it. So we've got the former prophets. These books are all one. Then we got the latter prophets, these three, Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And then these 12 minor prophets are really in one book. And here's who they are. And then you've got the writings, or as Christ said in the verse I read, the Psalms, which basically tells you the first book of the third section. When it's organized properly, the Bible has 7 sections. And we all know 7 is the number for completion, right? See how that works? The Bible actually has 49 books, not thank you, Wendell. 66. Wendell's my minister, so he's keeping me honest over here. 66. What, 66? Doesn't 49 sound a little bit different or better? 49 is 7 times 7. Double perfection. How we doing? Okay? So, if this is the kind of Bible we need to have, but, Jerome did something different. Okay. Septuagint. A lot of people what's the Septuagint? Should I read it? Didn't the apostles use the Septuagint? Absolutely. Now, young people, the Septuagint is an early Greek translation of the Old Testament, not the New Testament, the Old Testament. It was done in the 3rd century BC. Okay? The apostles, their Old Testament, like, Paul and John, when they looked at the Old Testament, they were using the Septuagint. Okay? So even though the Old Testament was originally written in Hebrew, it was translated to Greek because the Greek Empire, was running the world at that time. So Greek became the language that everybody was really doing business in and conversing in. So they translated it to this Septuagint. And the word Septuagint means 70. So there were 70 Jewish scholars that did that translation in Alexandria. So that's where the name comes from. And it was during the reign of Ptolemy of Philadelphia during this period of time. This was the Old Testament and used during Jesus Christ and the apostles. So there's nothing wrong with the Septuagint. Quite frankly, it's actually one of the older versions of the Old Testament. Even more so than the Old Testament we use today, which is the Masoretic text. Okay? So it's a Septuagint. I know my sons, this is one of their main Old Testament. They read other Old Testaments, but they like this one just because sometimes you get some interesting readings that you would from the Masoretic. Okay, the issue with the Septuagint is only this. There were things done in 200, 300 AD to the Septuagint that were not done originally. And this is important to know. Some people won't read the Septuagint because they see the Apocrypha books were added. And I'll show you who the Apocrypha books are in a minute. But a lot of the Septuagints today have these added. So people feel like, I can't read the Septuagint because these books are not inspired. That's true. But originally, the Septuagint did not include the Apocrypha books. Also, the Septuagints that are available today were rearranged. You remember we just went through the law, the prophets, and the writings? They got rearranged in 200, 300 AD by this guy. And this is why Jerome did what he did, okay, in the Latin Vulgate. Everybody with me so far? The original Septuagint did not have the Apocrypha, and it was in the right order. But we don't have the original Septuagint that the apostles and Jesus Christ had. We had the one that got rearranged. So just so understand that. So when people say, well, I can't use Septuagint, yes you can, you just got to understand that a couple things were done to it that the apostles in Jesus Christ weren't dealing with. Jerome developed the Latin Vulgate, okay, which is basically the Old Testament translated into Latin. That happened in about 383 AD. He was commissioned by Pope Damasus to do that. The concerns with the Latin Vulgate, there was some uncertainty among the scholars if the books were really translated from Hebrew or Origen's, that guy that 200 to 300 years later, he did it in Greek. So the question is, did Jerome really use the original Hebrew, or did he use a Greek version? And how much of each did he use? So these are just things that I want you to be aware of. We're not going to do the deep dive, but I think if you understand the issues, then you can navigate through, what's out here. Also, he maintained the rearrangement of the Septuagint. He did not go with the order of the scrolls in the temple. Okay, and he knew better. If you read anything about Jerome, he knew what the right arrangement was of the Old Testament books and the New Testament. He just chose not to do it. And we'll get into the reason why in a moment. He arrogantly introduced a new arrangement of the New Testament books, placing Paul's epistles ahead of the general epistles. We're going to talk about why that's a problem. And later versions added the Apocrypha books, which they made official to the Catholic book in 1546 AD. How are we doing? Okay? Everybody following along? Good. So that's the Latin Vulgate, and that's what Jerome did. So let's see the end result of what he did. Now, the L stands for law, P is prophets, W is writing. So I figured I would put letters next to each of them on what type of books they were, and you can see how he mixed them up. See, the first 5, he kept in order, no problem. But book number 6 was Joshua, and then they introduced, Ruth got in there. Ruth is a writing book, but that shows up as book number 8. Ruth should have been in the 3rd category, but you see what Jerome did. So he interspersed prophetic books with writings all the way through. And Malachi ended up being the last book of your Old Testament, unless you're one of the 5 that raised their hand. Now, turn to Luke, the 11th chapter, 50th verse. I want to show you something. Because some people have questioned, well, what really is the last book of the Bible? I mean, okay, all right, but it's not Malachi, but is it really Chronicles? So let's go to Luke 11. Because one of our rules of Bible study was what? We let the Bible interpret itself, right? So I'm not going to answer the question. I'm just going to show you a passage, and then I'll let you decide which one you think might be the last book of the Old Testament. Okay, let me make sure I get it here. All right. Yes, here we go. This is Luke 11, verse 50 through 51. Here's what it says. So that the blood of all the prophets poured out. Now this is, who's talking here? Christ is talking here, right? I think it's Christ. Yes. So the blood of all the prophets are poured out from the foundation of the world. Now that makes sense. We know what happened with the prophets, Jeremiah and Ezekiel. We know what happened to them. From the foundation of the world may be required of this generation. From the blood of Abel, when did that happen, young people? When did the blood of Abel happen? Genesis, right? What happened to Abel? His brother killed him, right? All right, so we know that's Genesis, right? We know that's Genesis. So from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zacharias, who perished between the altar and the house of God. When did Zacharias, perish between the altar and the house of God? Turn to 2 Chronicles. I didn't put it on the slide. Turn to 2 Chronicles, chapter 24. And we're going to look at verse 21. 2 Chronicles chapter 24, verse 21. And let's make sure I got the right verse myself. Yes, okay. This is talking about what happened to, Zechariah. It says, and I'll start with verse 20. Thus says God, why do you transgress the commandments of the Lord so that you cannot be blessed, because you have forsaken the Lord and he has forsaken you? And they conspired against him, and they stoned him with stones at the command of the king in the court of the house of the Lord. Where is the house of the Lord? Where's the house of the Lord? The temple. Okay? What we read in Luke 11:50, and that reference of Zechariah, between the altar and the court of the Lord, dealt with what happened at the temple. You won't know about that until you read 2 Chronicles. And that happened just before Ezra canonized the last books of the Old Testament. Okay? So it's just an indication. And what it says to me is, it can't be Malachi. So there's some evidence that Chronicles probably could be the last book of the Old Testament. Some people feel different. But this is a good way of using the Bible to say, there's some indications here. And you should use the word indication versus being dogmatic, right? Dogmatic is the wages of sin is death, and there's the verse right there. So sometimes we can be dogmatic, and other times we see indications. And if you know the difference, you'll be able to engage people in conversation without getting all emotional and thrown off your game. Because some things are very, very clear in the Bible, some things are indications, and sometimes we need to say, we don't know. We need to be honest, we don't know. Fair enough? Keep it moving. Okay, let's see here. All right, this is the original order that should have been in place before Jerome messed with it. In the New Testament, you see the 4 categories. You got the Gospels and Acts, right? Most of our Bibles have this correct. But a lot of your Bibles, right after Acts, the first book is Romans, not James. Right? Now, Jerome, one of the reasons people speculate that he moved Romans right after Acts is who commissioned him to do the Latin Vulgate? The Pope. Who's the Pope? He's the head of the what? And where's the Catholic Church located? Rome. So of course Rome needs to be right after the start of the church. Right? Because the most important city is Rome. The most important religious leader is Rome. I mean, it's the Pope, right? Bishop of Rome. Bishop of Rome. Not James. He just happened to be the brother of Christ and one of the early apostles that started the New Testament church, but that don't count. We'll work with the Pope. Here's the other problem. We talked yesterday about if somebody's unfamiliar with the Bible, Romans might be the worst place to go. And one of the smart aleck young people said, well, Bennett, that was the worst place to go. Why did you have us read about God providing proof of creation in Romans? These young people said, well, I don't like them. Okay? That's why I don't like them. They're too smart. But this is a better order. When you read the book of James and Peter and John and Jude, they're very straightforward. and they get the basics. Yes, I see a hand.
Is there any way to get a copy of all of these that you're doing somehow?
Yes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Rianne my email address and my phone number, and I'll leave it at the information desk. And anyone that wants it, you can write it down and then send me an email. I'll be glad to provide it. I'm probably going to turn it into, this is a PowerPoint presentation. I think I'm going to convert it to PDF because some people may not have PowerPoint, but if I do it as a PDF, you should be able to read it as a document, okay? But yes, I will definitely do this. But James, Peter, and John, these are straightforward. You know, be a doer of the word, not a hearer only. So this is why this is the proper order. Let's start with what's easy to understand and basic. Let's get our fundamentals down. Then we can begin to understand Romans and Hebrews, right? And what was going on in Galatians. This is the way to do it. And now it makes a lot of sense, and a lot of the apparent discrepancies, because you understand what these general epistles were saying, you start getting into Paul. And remember, what did Peter say about Paul's writings? Say it again, loud.
Hard to understand.
Hard to understand. So why would you put something that's hard to understand right after Acts? This is why what Jerome did is criminal. Say it again. They don't want you to know. That's right, Michaela. Yes, sir. Oh, they were twisting. Right. But see, as long as we know what the game is, then we can reorganize it. So don't let anybody, young people, don't let them take you to these books. Start here. And then once you understand this, you'll start to work through all the difficult scriptures. Because Peter admitted his writings are difficult, but they're deep and profound. So Paul's writings are important, but difficult to absorb and apply without your fundamentals. This is what Jerome did. See what he did? Gospels, then here we go, right? Romans, first book up. So we got all of his writings in place, and then the easy stuff is on the back end before we get to Revelations. Now you know this is satanic. That's just my words. This is evil. Okay? He knew better. So if you can get a Bible in the right order, it would be helpful. But if you can't, understand the right order that you should be reading it, and it'll help out a lot. But I just want to show you what Jerome did. And remember, he took it from the Septuagint. But he took it from the Septuagint that was rearranged, that was very different than what the apostles and Jesus Christ had. So nothing wrong with the Septuagint, just got to understand what was going on. All right, these are the extra, now we're going to talk about the extra biblical books. Because I know I have friends, I know, my son Troy and my other son Kevin, they have friends that find these extra, some of these other books more interesting to read, because they got a nice story flow and they've got real good historical information. And those books are great. There are some Christians that say, I'll never read Jasher, I'll never read Jubilees. You don't have to. Wendell has a phrase that I love. He says, there's no scripture that we should be afraid of. And I would also tell you there's no book of antiquity, secular or non-secular, meaning Bible, that we should be afraid of. You have to be afraid of these books. You just gotta know what they are, where they fit, and then that way you can get the most out of them without taking books like Jubilees and trying to prove doctrine. Jubilees is not for proving doctrine, like salvation. We don't go to prove salvation in the book of Jubilees. We look at Acts. So you just gotta know what these things are and where they fit. There's three categories. Category one, these are my categories. Non-canonical or extra-biblical. Canonical just means authorized. The Bible was canonized or authorized by really two people, and they were both of the priesthood. Old Testament was canonized or authorized by Ezra. Old Testament. New Testament, John. And if you follow John's lineage, John is of the priesthood. God's very consistent. He always gave care of his word to the priest. If you read the Old Testament, they'll say, well, David wrote the Psalms and he laid it up to Asaph. It was always laid up. Hezekiah, he wrote some things and it was laid up, basically given to a priest. And then the priest took it and they made sure everything was in order and they put it in the ark. So when you see the word laid up, that just means it was given to the authorized person for care. So that way it wouldn't be corrupted. Okay, there are 10 lost books, lost, meaning they're books of history. So you'll see in the Bible, somebody mentioned yesterday, where the Bible references some of these books. That's right. These are some of the lost books. And I figured I would put this up here so you guys could see, like for example, Jasher. Jasher is mentioned in Joshua and 2 Samuel. These books, the Bible, my parents told me a long time ago, and I think it's accurate, the Bible is a summary book. The Bible does not document everything that happened from Genesis to, it doesn't, okay? But as life was going on, there were other books written, historical and otherwise, that told more details of some of what we read in the Bible. These charts that you see on the wall, that hopefully you'll get a chance. There's one on the wall, there's one on the table, and I do have some magnifying glasses for those of us that are visually challenged. Wendell.
I just want to say this. The quotes in the Bible from these books are true. That's the key thing.
That's correct.
There's a whole lot that may not be true in those books, but the quotes in the Bible from these books are true, which that's why they can be used.
Thank you. And that is true. Everybody follow what Wendell just said? Whatever's quoted out of these books is true. Nobody said the whole book is true. Just what was quoted was true. For example, I'll give you an example. With Jasher, and I really like the book of Jasher, the problem is we don't have the original version of the book of Jasher. But the book itself had true information that was referenced out of the Bible. That's all. That's one of the reasons why Jasher, okay, maybe Ezra didn't canonize it, because we don't have a real good manuscript proof of the book of Jasher. So it was not included. Right? Everybody follow that? Maybe we don't have a copy, but we have something that somebody wrote, but we're not sure how accurate it was. So that's all. Then you keep it simple. You have to run away from it. But these are some of the books that were referenced in the Bible. So whatever, like Wendell said, thank you, Wendell, whatever was stated that's true. So feel free to read the book. Just understand, don't try to make it prove doctrine. That's all. Okay, here are the Apocryphal books. A lot of people get emotional about the Apocryphal books because the Catholic Church put it in their Bible. And now you got popes and religious officials trying to, create doctrine that may or may not be in conflict with the Bible. So they made a mess of things, when they created the Latin Vulgate. The Apocrypha just basically means questionable authenticity or secret or hidden. There's about 15 of them, and they're included in Roman Catholic Bibles. Now, the Apocrypha books were written during the intertestamental period. And all of you know, or most of you know, the Bible goes silent, after about 350 BC. And we don't really pick it up until just before Christ is born. So what was going on in that 300 to 400 year period? Life was happening, things were being done, but God had gone silent. These books were written during that period. Maccabees is a good example. Maccabees, great historical book. Great historical book. Just don't try to prove doctrine out of it. That's all. Everybody with me on that? Because I want us to get familiar with what the world is looking at, and then we can redirect them. Okay? These are the apocryphal books that were included in the Septuagint. Okay, you can see Maccabees here and Epistle of Jeremiah and so forth. So these are some of them. Okay? So if you've got a friend of yours that's reading, I can never pronounce that word. Ecclesiasticus. Thank you, Erica. You can see I need help. Ecclesiasticus. Quite a spiritual book if you've ever read it. Good concepts in there. Couple of conflicts, but overall it's a pretty good spiritually in-depth book. So feel free to read it. Feel free to entertain it. Just don't try to prove doctrine. That's all. Okay, the last category is what we would call pseudepigrapha. These are the books that were falsely attributed. We're not sure who the author was, or the work was attributed to a figure of the past. So basically what that says is, let's say that I was quote unquote a prophet back in the day, and I may or may not have written anything original, but I had followers or disciples, and 300 years from now, they found out about me, and somebody wrote something that they said I wrote. But we're not really sure I wrote it, but this guy 300 years removed from me said I wrote it. So we're not really sure. That's what this is. And there's a lot of that out there. You know, Gospel of Timothy, there's a few of them. Let's go to the next page. Okay? Let's see. Yeah, there you go. The Assumption of Moses. I mean, maybe Moses said it, maybe he didn't. We're not sure. All right? Jubilees. We mentioned that earlier. Psalms of Solomon. Baruch. You know, Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs. You know, we don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Okay? So these were written between 300 BC and 300 AD. Some of these were works of Jewish religious leaders. Okay? So those are the three categories. Lost books, Apocrypha, pseudepigrapha. Everybody follow that? How we doing? Go okay? Good. All right. Now we start dealing with some proofs. You guys want to, this is your remember your homework assignment? All right. Here we go. Proof number one is the Bible can be proved through numerology. People get very nervous about that term. All it is the numbers and the science of numbers. God, numbers are all through the Bible. I think I had read one of my books, I had Biblical Mathematics. It says every fifth verse of the Bible includes a number. Every fifth verse of the Bible includes a number. Numbers are the secret code of God's Word. It was in use among Hebrews as early as the 5th century BC. That's before Christ. There we go. 1 out of 5 scripture contains a number. So obviously that must be pretty important. Gematria. It's a Greek word, means word measuring. And I referenced Psalms 147 verses 4 through 5. If you want to write that down, I won't go there for time. But it talks about, you know, how God has things numbered. It's a system by which there are hidden truths and meanings that are discovered. God admits that he hides things in his word. We've read that, right? And I think there's a scripture, I didn't write it down, but there's a scripture that says, it's God's glory to hide a thing, and it's the king's glory to discover it. So people say, well, if God wants to know, how come he just didn't put it out there? Because God knows there's something too when you got to go search for something. You only search for something that's important, right? That you care about. And God wants us involved Remember, we got to work out our salvation in fear and trembling. So he's not going to give it on a GPS instruction, right, young folks? Got to go get it. If you really want it, you got to go get it, and it's there. But God intentionally hides it, and then he gives you clues to find out what he wants you to know. Now, in the Hebrew, unlike our alphabet, okay, see, we have a number system, right? We call it the Arabic number system. We have a symbol, we have 1, and we got 2, and we got 3, and we actually write it down. Hebrew, there is no number system. It's an alphabet, and each letter of the alphabet meant a number. So the first letter of, I think it's Alf for Hebrew, they already knew, oh, that means, if I say Alf, that means the number 1. They didn't use the number 1, they used Alf. Okay? So that's how they did it. And then they added up the numerical values of words, and that's how they found out what the spiritual meaning might be. Remember, it's the secret code. History of gematria, it was first used in the 8th century BC by this Assyrian king Sargon. I looked this up, the wall of Khorsabad, and what this guy did is, he took his name, and he added up all the letters of his name, and this is what it totaled, and they built the wall to that many cubits. He was the first one that we know of that used it. So the length of the wall reflected the numerical value of his name. How about that? Just interesting side note. Okay, just kind of interesting. Okay. And for the young people that want to act like people tell you, well, the Bible is not scientific, well, that's not how some of our most famous inventors felt about it. Albert Einstein, we know who he is, right? Okay, look what he said. Everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science, young people, what did he just say? Anyone that's serious, pursuit of science, right? That's probably your friends. Becomes convinced that there's a spirit manifest in the laws of the universe. A spirit vastly superior to that of man. And one in the face of which, with our modest power, we must feel humble. That's Albert Einstein. So where do your friends fall compared to what Mr. Einstein said? I rest my case. Sir Isaac Newton, you know? Who was he?
Probably the smartest guy that ever lived.
Smartest guy ever lived. Gravity. Yeah, he's the guy that discovered gravity. It was already there, but he uncovered it. Right. Here's what he said. God created everything by what? Number and weight and measure. You can find biblical verses close to that. It is the perfection of God's works, and they are all done with the greatest of simplicity. You know who complicates things? Satan. Why does Satan complicate things?
Almost confusion.
This doesn't have to be complicated, but the world wants it to be complicated because Satan wants it to be complicated so that none of us can understand. Our job is to simplify it so that we can empower ourselves and others. This thing, the smartest guy says a lot of simplicity, so I go with him. He is the God of order, not of confusion. Don't we have a Bible verse that says that? Okay, well, Sir Isaac Newton felt that way too. Last quote. Pythagoras, remember I told you he's the guy that father of mathematics? Numbers rule the universe. Everything is ranged according to number and mathematical shape. Pythagoras. He predated Socrates. So Socrates actually learned from him, and so did Plato, and so did Aristotle. So that's some pretty good witnesses there about the power of numbers and how God feels about how he hides things in his word. Okay, I covered this already. The Hebrew as well as the Greek alphabet, by the way, they don't have numbers. So letters 1 through 9 will represent a number, 10 through 18, etc. You guys can see that. Here's what I found interesting, and I added this almost at the end of my preparation. I didn't realize this. The Aramaic numbers as we know it, 23, 35, all of that, was originally invented in India, not the Arabs. India in the 6th century AD. That's 600 years after Christ lived. So we didn't have numbers until after 600 years after Christ. It's crazy. Numbers were not in widespread use until the 8th century AD, not BC, AD. Okay? 771 to be exact. The Arabs wanted to know what the Indians had done, so they invited them, into Babylon to find out what this was all about, and then they converted it into Arabic script. But the Indians actually created the numbers that we know today. We call them Arabic because the Arabs translated into their language. That's just an example of gematria, right? In your Bible. We all know, right? The mark of the beast, Revelation 13, the number of his name. Let's count the number of the beast and the number of a man. His number is 606. And the reason for 6 is man was created on the 6th day. Example of Hebrews in the alphabet. Okay? See, Alpha is 1, Gimel is 3, and then this is the Greek. These are some of the key numbers. There's a lot of them. Up there, probably from 1 to 40, every one of those numbers have a spiritual reason behind it. These are the ones I think we're most familiar with. 3, because Christ was in the grave 3 days, 3 nights. So resurrection, divine completeness, perfection. Number 4, God created the world on number 4, on day number 4. If you notice, we got 4 regions, north, east, south, west. We think of directions. 4 of those. We got 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter. Okay? See how everything connects? And 7, obviously we know God rests on the 7th day. Christ had 7 loaves of bread in baskets. We got 7 churches, 7 crowns. So there's numbers all through it. 8, I'll let you just look at that. And we know 40 trials, probation, testings, Noah's flood, Christ, children of Israel in the wilderness because of their disobedience, 40 years, etc. Okay. I want to show you this before we get to your names. Great. Damascus. Damascus is the oldest city in the world. And notice the number of Damascus, 444. Makes sense. Creation of the world. That's the D for it. Remember, in the Hebrew, there is no vowels, so it's only consonants. So we got the D, number 4. We got the M, 40, right? We got this, we got this letter as part of Damascus, 100, and then the little S is 300. You add them all together, you get 444. That's right in your Bible, okay? Here's one, very obscure reference. Genesis 14:14. Remember Eliezer? He was the one in Abraham's household, and Abraham said to God, "Am I going to have children through him?" He said, "No, not him. I'm gonna." You're right. Well, Eliezer, Abraham had 318 trained servants in his household that were trained to go to battle, and you'll read that in Genesis 14:14. Well, Eliezer's name equals 318, which was the number of servants in the house, and that's how his name would have been spelled in Hebrew. I mean, you think, wow, that's in there too? Yeah, it is. The Bible's an amazing book. Amazing book. All right. Now, here's one. Noah and his 2 sons, when you look at their names, it adds up to 888. 8 is new birth, new creation. The 888 is really the first resurrection saints. Noah and his sons were an Old Testament type of the resurrection. Now you say, well, hey, where is Ham? Remember, Ham was cursed. Okay? So that's why you just have Noah, Shem, and Japheth. So they were a type of resurrection right out of the flood. Jesus Christ, in the Greek, his name, that's how you spell it in the Greek, also 888 in the Greek, that's how you do it up there. Right? First resurrected from the dead. Old covenant, new covenant. How we doing? Interesting? Great. Just a thought. Okay. Now, the homework exercise I gave you, not that I'm trying to turn any of us into apostles or resurrected saints, I just wanted to have some fun. And hopefully there'll be some benefit or relevance to you. In numerology, there's also a modern day twist on this. And I say modern day twist because I want you to look at it just like that. This is not doctrine, this is not anything. But I did it for my own name, and I thought it might be interesting to each of you. In numerology, every name has a vibratory number. Remember, Pythagoras said numbers, are tied to vibrations in the universe. So we looked at your birthday, and we looked at your name. Your birthday reflects your personality, the type of person that you are, and your name is how you express that personality in life, what type, your attributes and things like that. So, what I had you do is go through this exercise, right? This is a correction that I hope all of you got. I forgot the N yesterday, and I forgot the S. So, you should have gotten a name number, right? And you should have gotten a birth number. Did anybody get those 2 numbers? All right. Is Sherry here? Where's Sherry? Is she here? I don't see Sherry. One of the ladies said, but Ben, what does that mean? I said, I intentionally held back. All right. And I'm going to give this to Rianne. I do have this as a handout, and I forgot to give it to you guys. Okay, birth meanings. So, who had a number in one of these categories? Okay, oh, you did, Richard? Is that Richard? You're Richard, right? What's your name?
Stacy. Stacy.
Oh, hey, Stacy. Which one are you, Stacy? Which number did you get?
I got number 4.
4? Okay. And Stacy, and by the way, I haven't spoken to Stacy before, so I don't know. Stacy, here's what number 4 means. And you tell me if this resonates with you or not. But if you're a number 4, you're a stable individual, you're mature, and you're a solid leader. Huh? There you go. Okay, he's being modest. But it says, if something needs to get done, you give it to Stacy. He's got an eye for detail, all right? They'll get the project done in an orderly fashion. They're very methodical. They have a casual kind of ease, all right? Stacy, is that kind of you? I don't know. There you go. I didn't know. He could have said, no, man, that ain't me. And this is... Okay, so Stacy is a 2, and he said, that's kind of like me. Now, here's me, just so, because you guys are been in the, I was a, let me see, what's my birth number? Oh, sorry. Let me get my birth number. Go back. I was a 3. Okay, I was a 3. And in 3, it says you're opportunistic, you're right place, right time, and it says they're naturally lucky. Well, when I listen to my mind, sometimes, they are highly intuitive, intelligent, I hope so, all right? But here's the thing that I liked, right here. They mean well and have the best intentions. Some people will say, Ben, you can be be manipulative at times. That's true. And I'll tell you why. The people that see me as manipulative are the people that are typically controlling. And when I run into a controlling person, I attack them. And why do I do that? Because I see them hurting other people. So I will not let, I have a family member. Okay, not my son, but I have a family member that I think is controlling and everything has to go her way. And she thinks that I'm so manipulative. Yeah, because it's okay if it goes her way, but not my way. And I just bring that out to say, that's just how it goes. So I'm a 3, for better or for worse. All right, let's go. Now, let's go to the names. Okay, this is your name. Anybody on one of these? Yes. You are what?
I'm Amanda and I'm a 2.
You're 2. What's your name?
Amanda.
Amanda, okay. All right, Amanda. This is fact check. Amanda's a 2, so she's viewed as kind, balanced. She's got tact. Okay? And it says she's got a quiet power of judgment. And she deals with partnerships in harmony and rivalry. How are we doing, Stacey? Is this you or yes or no? I'm sorry, Amanda, is this you?
I think I strive for that.
You strive for it. You strive for it. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys this chart. All of y'all, we'll make copies. You can get it at the information table. But the purpose of it, there's some relevance here to not only how we numbered Jesus' name and Noah's name, but also some application to some of us. Okay. The second proof, and by the way, guys, from a time standpoint, we're doing fine. I need about 10 more minutes. Okay? Yeah, I need about 10 more minutes. You got it. Fulfilled prophecy is the second proof of the Bible. And this one here is the one that we're most familiar with, so I know it won't take as long. Okay, there are about 2,000 prophecies in the Bible. 300 deal with the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. There are no prophetic failures. That's important. All of the religions that have so-called prophets, they got prophetic failures. So Deuteronomy 18:21 through 22 is a good verse to memorize, because if the Bible ever has a prophetic failure, the whole Bible gets invalidated. So we either got prophecies that have been fulfilled or not yet fulfilled. No failures. So this is one of the proofs of the Bible. Psychics, the people that predict things, only 8% of their predictions come true. And people go to them every day, right? Every day you go into somebody that's got a 92% failure rate. Does that make sense to you? 90% failure rate? We're going to them? Come on now. Most powerful evidence of the Bible is that it's divine, not human. So anybody that's reading, what is it, tarot cards or their daily astrology, come on now. All right? Now, these are some things that happened throughout history that were predicted in the Bible. We all know about Daniel and how he foretold about the different governments. Now, he gave the prophecy of Medo-Persia in 539. Okay? He gave the prophecy in 604 BC. That's when he gave the prophecy. They began to be fulfilled, what's that, 60 years later? 300 years later? Over 500 years later. That's the Bible we work with. Perfect predictions, well in advance, and the record of history rolls it out. There's your reference scripturally. Cyrus, king of Persia, one of my favorite, references. And that's the reference there. Now, Isaiah lived between 740 and 690 BC. And this prophecy named Cyrus by name 150 years before he was born. Then, Cyrus' proclamation for Israel to return from exile, that was predicted 180 years before it actually happened. So the Bible, okay, Mike, I said that I would need another 5 minutes. I should be done. Is that okay, Skip? Yeah, we'll be done in about 5 minutes, but I think it's important. I don't want to leave this off. Okay, so we've got a situation where before the guy was born, the Bible said he was going to be born 150 years. And then when he was born, whatever he was supposed, before he was born, whatever he was supposed to do, that was predicted 180 years before that. Powerful, very powerful. And then we know about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. These are just more prophecies, and for those of you that want the slides, you'll be able to look at that. But it's excellent reading, and it really will build your faith. What are the odds? A lot of people talk about odds. On any given day, you got a chance of 1 out of 250 million to be struck by lightning. Americans read the Bible. 1 out of 10 people read the Bible daily. Now you know why the spiritual information knowledge is not too good. 9 out of 10 people don't really read the Bible. Okay? We got more people going to McDonald's than read the Bible. 1 out of 2. Okay, eat out in restaurants, and 1 out of 20 of those are McDonald's. So I want to show you some odds of daily living. What's the odds that a baby born in Bethlehem 2,000 years ago was just an ordinary baby? Okay, and that's the prophecies we're dealing with. Science speaks, but he said it sets out the odds of any one man fulfilling, we're talking about Jesus Christ, fulfilling only 8 of the 60 major prophecies. Now, this is the odds of Jesus Christ fulfilling 8 of the 60 major prophecies and 300 that were related coming true. There's a probability. 1 in 10 to the 7th power. On Saturday, 1/17th, not 7, thank you. 1 to 10 in the 17th power. 100 quadrillion. And I love this analogy. That's enough silver dollars to cover the entire state of Texas 2 feet deep. So one of those silver dollars throughout the state of Texas, 2 feet deep, and we pull that one out. Come on now. This is ridiculous. How's that for an analogy? Okay. I think here's where I'll wrap it up, okay? The Bible says there's only one way. The gate is narrow. We wonder why so many people don't believe the Bible. Because it's a whole nother way of life, and the world does not support the narrative, and Satan has intentionally confused everything, and that's why your friends don't understand. That's how it is. But Christ says there are few. Not a lot of people are going to make it into the kingdom, not because God doesn't desire it that way, but people are choosing not to believe. And that's a personal choice. And that's okay, because God created us with free will. So we don't have to get upset that people don't see what we see. But don't let their disbelief take you out. Okay? Last quote. United States Senate Chaplain Richard Halverson, I love this, and we'll end here. The fact is, the birth, crucifixion, and bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ are celebrated worldwide by folk of every race, language, and color every year. And believing in Jesus, they have they have been delivered from the most evil and disastrous, frustrating, debilitating habits and life forms possible. There's a lot of people praying to God, and God is answering those prayers. But here's the problem. The real problem with Jesus Christ is not that folks can't believe in him, but what? It's a personal choice. It's been my pleasure.
Don't forget to remove this. Nothing to remove the card. Okay, keep it. You want the card now? Because